the name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back. Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
Wham! Kazam! First try. Why so serious?
He's a fast killer.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
I'm drinking pump. I've been drinking green tea all goddamn day.
I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this.
Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Good Day for a Movie podcast. Alongside me, as always, Tate.
What's up?
I'm Jacob. And I'm still not going to tell you this guy's name, but he's here.
What's up?
He's sitting next to me. Just ate some waffle fries.
I warmed them up in a toaster oven.
Yeah, they were leftover waffle fries.
Yep.
Fries, very scary to me. Post cool down, post fridge. Toaster oven's the answer.
Yep. He's probably happy that he's anonymous at this point.
Yeah, because that's just a psycho person move. Either eat all of the fries or throw them away.
No. Leaned into the mic for that one.
Yes, he did. All right, well, this is our third episode. We've watched two movies so far. And you know what
that means?
That means it's my turn to pick again.
No. You stop it. It means it's your boy's turn to pick.
What you got for us?
Are you guys ready?
No.
All right, so this is a movie that I've been wanting to watch for a little while now.
La La Land?
Very excited about it. La La Land is a great movie.
La La Land.
No, it is Punch Drunk Love with Adam Sandler. I don't really know that much about it, honestly. I've just heard that it's a really good movie, and it's a must-watch if you are an Adam Sandler fan, and I've heard a lot of people say that I think it's one of his best. It was made in 2002, so I don't know what that is in comparison with like the other Sandler movies. But it's, I think, a rom-com type. I guess the genres that this says is drama, romance, mystery, thriller, comedy. a lot of genres there.
Well, Philip Seymour Hoffman's in it.
Yep. Yeah, so Adam Sandler.
It's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. This will be interesting for me.
Yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson, which is the guy who did There Will Be Blood, which was a fantastic movie. I want to watch that one again, though. But all these other movies that he's made, I don't believe I've seen. So
I've seen 3 Paul Thomas Anderson movies, and my favorite one was most definitely There Will Be Blood.
So good.
I only gave it a 72.
There Will Be Blood?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
The other one that I've seen, Inherent Vice, I gave it a 60.
Okay.
It was... I need to watch that one again because there were elements that I really liked, but it was kind of confusing, and I think I fell asleep and had to rewatch the ending. And then the most recent one I've watched of his was The Master, with Joaquin Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman, Amy Adams, crazy. Laura Dern, Jesse Plemons. Great cast. I was like, this movie's going to be freaking awesome. I did not enjoy it. I gave it a 41. So
I remember you saying that you didn't like that movie.
Yeah, so I don't know what it is about Paul Thomas Anderson. It's kind of been a theme where I just haven't been the biggest fan of his directed movies, but I am a huge Adam Sandler fan. So I'm really excited for this movie because I've also wanted to see it for a long time.
So this looks like it was kind of, I mean, obviously when he was 2002, after Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison, after Big Daddy, after Waterboy, those were all between like 96 and like 99. The Wedding Singer was even in 98. So this looks like it's right after that because it was in 2002. 50 First Dates, he was in it in 2004. So
Mr. Deeds was the same year. So this is kind of the change into, because there was a few years there in the early 2000s where Adam Sandler was kind of doing, he was still doing a fair amount of comedies like The Longest Yard, like you said, but he was also kind of transitioning into like the serious actor that we got in Uncut Gems last year.
Yep.
So this is kind of the beginning stages of that Adam Sandler. So.
That's kind of what I've heard about this movie is that if you like and think he's good in Uncut Gems, you need to watch Punch Drunk Love to see him. Yeah, so I'm very excited for it.
Rock on. I am too. What are you thinking?
I do like Adam Sandler.
Deep thoughts.
I don't know any other name except Philip Seymour. I love Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman is great.
For sure.
Amazing.
I wonder how big of a role he's going to have.
Yeah.
I hope it's big.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, and also, if you want to watch it with us, it is streaming right now on HBO. So
The best streaming platform out there.
we'll be back in a few moments.
HBO Max.
Yes.
Be specific.
Our good friend Max. All right, folks. We'll see you on the other side.
I'm sorry about that. I wanted to ask you something because you're a doctor, right? I don't like myself sometimes. Can you help me?
Mary, I'm a dentist. What kind of help do you think I can give you?
I'm gonna go and eat tomorrow night. Do you want to go with me?
I didn't ask for a shrink. That must have been somebody else. Also, that pudding isn't mine. Also, I'm wearing a suit today because I had a very important meeting this morning, and I don't have a crying problem. So.
Okay.
This is Barry.
Hey, baby, I guess we got disconnected before.
How did you get this number?
You canceled your credit card. I need you not to cancel your credit card, and I need you to up your limit.
4 blonde brothers came after me.
Fuck, where you going? We know where you live.
What's the problem? One of your employees has been threatening me.
Shut up! Will you shut up? Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
I have a love in my life. It makes me stronger than anything you can imagine.
All right, folks. We're back.
Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah, that was definitely the weirdest movie we've watched. And it's the first movie I don't have a score for yet. Usually the last 2 episodes I've got my score like pretty much lock in stone, at least a range.
It's definitely one that I feel like I have to think about.
Yeah,
it's not like I watched it and I was easily like, oh yeah, that's in this range of scores. Like I'm kind of, yeah, I have definitely not nailed down my.
I have absolutely zero idea.
Yeah.
What I want to give it. Is it in the 80s? Is it in the 50s? 40s? I have no idea right now. So I want to open up this discussion of, we kind of got into this last week. Was there a point to this movie?
Yep.
Like, what was the point of it?
Yeah. So, well, I think that's the hardest question I think to answer. I think about it. But I think that's the main goal of the film, is to kind of talk about the meaning of it. Because like when I initially went to go like type all my thoughts about it, that was like the last thing that I was going to type, and I was like, wow, what was the point of all of this?
That was the last thing that I was going to type too, and then I was like, I think that's a pretty good jumping off point about our thoughts on the movie.
Well, and I know that like because I just started to type it into Google because I was going to see just what like Google says, and the first thing it says punch drunk love meaning, and I was just like, so I hesitated to click it because I was like, I don't want to read other thoughts yet. I want to write down, make sure I get mine down first. But yeah, I guess I can start because I kind of got one down. That I just thought the meaning of this film was just kind of to portray a different kind of story about a human life experience, something that not a lot of other movies tend to cover. I don't think there's a lot of other movies that are kind of built around this type of a character.
Especially at this time. I feel like it might have got... It's a little bit more popular now. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but this, at least the type of movie, is definitely kind of coming into swing now. But in 2002, this is a movie that I feel like nobody would have liked.
Yeah, and like the way it was shot and all like the camera work, and I thought that everything was super funky about it. How he was constantly moving around a room, moving things, touching like the camera was the way it was moving around him.
Yeah, and I mean I think the most poignant scene on that was when he first calls the sex line.
Yeah,
and he's sitting in a chair that he can't move.
He's doing like what everybody I feel like does when they're on the phone. They're just like walking around the house doing meaningless things.
The first shot of him is like he's in the left third, the stage right third of the shot, and then he sits down, and it sits there for like 10 seconds on that shot, and the camera just pans over relatively quickly to where he's now in the right third, and it kind of shows like a chair that is like free, and you can just sit in it and move it wherever you want. But this chair, if you haven't seen the movie, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but very weird.
Yeah.
That's what I keep coming back to. I'm like, just keep thinking about it, and I'm like, weird movie.
Yeah, very weird. But I guess as far as, and there's other things I want to get into, but I think that's kind of the only thing I could nail it down to, is that it was just a movie, about a different kind of life experience for people. Because there are people like him that are out in the world that probably experience exactly what we just watched, but like we don't. A lot of people probably aren't even aware of.
And I mean, especially now, because like I feel like that dial service, it's definitely still around, but it's kind of been, not to get into some weird territory here, but it's been supplanted by like the Pornhub industry. Like it's such a scam.
Yeah.
That.
Well, and like
that's part of the reason it's gone away.
Yeah. And you touched on a point of something that I want to come back to, I think, and that's the idea of him wanting to have conversations with people, or him wanting to find someone to talk to. But first, I guess while we stay on this meaning, do we have any other thoughts on the meaning of the film?
It was so confusing. I'm just in like a cloud of like, what the frick did I just watch?
I believe this is the first time we're hearing from you on this segment. You haven't even opened your mouth.
I know, because this movie put me through just a total, just what?
I think everything about this movie was very unexplanatory. Like, they definitely, right off the bat, they don't give you any information about who he is, why he's just in a warehouse in a desk. The first scene with the car flipping over and the crash.
Yeah, what was that?
And then they just drop off a piano, or the tiny little piano.
I completely forgot about that.
That entire scene.
No,
and like,
thinking about
there's
that.
a lot
It's
of little
just making
details.
No sense.
A lot of little details, a lot of little things that happened where I was like, immediately it caught my attention. Immediately I was like into the movie, because I was like, what's happening? I'm about to find out. But you never really find out. Like and like they do a really good job of like, I barely even knew what his business was.
Yeah, it wasn't until the movie ended and it went to the HBO Max explanation screen, the play menu, and the explanation of the movie that HBO Max gives is: a lonely owner of a novelty toilet supply business falls in love with a mysterious Brit while falling prey to a phone sex scam. I had no idea he was a novelty toilet supply person. Like,
well, and I
knew that they were like plungers, but
yeah, I remember him talking about plungers, and then he's getting all those weird phone calls from his sisters. And I honestly didn't trust any of that. I was like,
oh, well, these
this
aren't
store
his
is a
sisters
front.
when it was. Yeah.
This, I was like, he doesn't actually do this. He's wearing a suit at a warehouse selling plungers, and all these people calling her his sisters. He has 7 sisters, and all that. I was like, he's lying about everything. He's covering up something. We're gonna figure out what that is. But he ended up, everything was just truthful. But like, he just doesn't. Yeah, it is a very confusing film as far as they don't give you a lot to go off of.
We were kind of talking about this beforehand, and I had Uncut Gems in the back of my head the whole time, because people have said like, hey, this is like one of Sandler's like first dramatic roles. And I really don't think that's a good comparison to make, because I think this is a completely different movie.
I can see, I guess, how, because in my head, Adam Sandler movies are Waterboy, are Big Daddy, are like
for
Happy
sure.
Gilmore, all of those. And then, and for me, Uncut Gems, and like even more recently, I guess, in like the 2000s or whatever, I just think of like Grown Ups. And like, I just kind of see him in this
just the
role
slob.
of like the, comedy, typical blockbuster Hollywood
He's
film.
making movies to go to Hawaii with Jennifer Aniston.
Just like all those types of things. But Uncut Gems was the first movie that I think I've ever seen of Adam Sandler's where he was a serious role. And so that's why I think maybe why they make that connection. As far as like the movie goes, very different.
Yeah, very different.
But, well, you actually touched on one thing that I did think was similar, and that's the sounds. And Sage, during the movie, made a point of it. And I think one of you did, just the amount of background noise that you can
I brought that up. That was one of my notes. The score was just way too loud for me. I don't know if it's because I'm going deaf or something, but I wish they would have lowered the score in a lot of moments because it was hard to understand what they were saying. Yeah, but I feel like Uncut Gems was different because so I've only seen Uncut Gems once, and it was back in December when it came out. And maybe another difference is I saw that in the movie theater, so I was able to hear everything better, unlike watching a movie at home. I noticed it a lot more here. I didn't notice it in Uncut Gems, but I don't know. Like I said, that just drives me crazy how the score was so loud throughout the entire movie. Like it needed to be brought down like a decimal or two, and I think it would have been great, like sounding wise.
I think there's definitely a reason why because it was very loud, and I think there's a reason why he had everything like that. But
and I don't
definitely
like it.
Reminded me of like it kind of was like that anxiety-inducing, just like type of scenes where like there's so much going on. So it's the scene where his sister comes in and introduces her coworker that he wanted her to meet, and he's kind of in the middle of answering this phone, talking to the whatever Georgia Peach girl, and she's like threatening him. While that's going on, he's trying to talk to his sister, who his sister is just kind of
very weird. Chloe crazy, from 24, very weird actress,
and trying to like meet this girl that's like into him. While like this crash goes on in the store, and the music that's playing is like the sounds that are playing. It's not even really music, but it was just like.
Well, yeah, and like
it was just everything about that scene was like making me want to like just freak out.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed when the sound was when the score was that high for those moments. I thought that was fitting, but it was other moments where it was a relatively calm scene for this movie, and the score was still boosted up there, and you're just like, what is he saying? I need the subtitles.
Subtitles are just blah. American, you hated the first 2/3 of that movie. I hated that movie for the first 2/3.
I think he said it's making him extremely anxious a few times.
Freaking out. That scene you're talking about, freaking out. I was like, get me in there. Let me take care of these things.
And he was like so calm during it. Which was weird.
No, he was freaking out.
Knocks on the window. Anybody hurt?
Yeah, he's like, anybody hurt? You good? Cool.
Oh my gosh.
And to me, he seemed like he was keeping his cool during all of that. But I mean, this gets to another point of his like character. He would have those like freakouts every once in a while, and I think that was very interesting because like, again, another random moment that didn't even get that much explaining. Was when he was over at his sister's house and just shattered the windows.
Kicked
I think that's
3 windows.
I think for me, the meaning of the whole thing was about his character, about his like nervous tics, being just messed with by all of his siblings, all of his sisters for his whole life.
Just for being just a weirdo kind of different
just
guy.
For like being like him, I guess.
Yeah.
And like even just being in the presence of his sisters, he was just freaking out.
Yeah.
And someone says one thing that just trips him up. And yeah, like when they're at the restaurant and
see, I understood that one more. I like the point you brought up.
I mean, it was after, but like, yeah.
I think that's why, like, the restaurant stuff, like, it kind of tied it into, and you kind of made that click in my head. The restaurant scene when she brought up the story that they were talking about
with the
hammer. So
that's right.
That was the same story that she brought up.
I kind of want to talk more about like his personality and like who we think he is, because like to me he like kind of strikes me as like they kind of even say it in the thing, a lonely person. Clearly someone that's lonely. Clearly someone that was, like you just said, Sage, picked on throughout like his life. It sounds like by his sisters, and I think all of that was just because he was just different. Nothing like good or bad about him. And I think that's also came out at the very last scene where he's talking to also Philip Seymour Hoffman. Killed it.
Yeah,
awesome,
for sure.
But he didn't have a lot of scenes.
He kills every role he does.
Yeah. But in that last scene, when Philip Seymour Hoffman starts giving him shit for being like a pervert or whatever, and he was just like, so what? He's like, I'm a nice, normal human being. Stop like
I keep to myself,
bullying me, all these things. That's one thing that I think I like about this movie a lot, is that he's just a different person. Like there's a lot of rom-coms and there's a lot of all these things of just an ideal human that just like a Ryan Reynolds that's just like, figuring his way out and finds his perfect girl.
And like
then,
a lot
like,
of times
fall happily in love. And
in movies and in real life, you'll have these types of people that are just constantly taken advantage of, can never get ahead in life. And I like the twist that this movie gave it of this guy who is being taken advantage of so many different ways. He snaps and he's like, hey, stop freaking doing this to me. This is not right. And he does end up getting his way. I mean, he didn't get his $500 back, but
yeah, he's $500 short.
Or his $1,200 from calling the phone for, what was that, $2.99 for 1 minute for the first half hour, and then
he spent a lot of money on pudding.
And the pudding, that was crazy. Yeah, it was just such a strange movie.
I hated that the last third of the movie was good, because I hated the first 2/3, and the fact that the last third, like, I agree with you, Jacob. I think the whole point, kind of going back to the meaning of it being about him, like, those people hurt finally something that he was in love with, and it just was like, I'm getting what I want.
Yeah.
And he stood up to Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Look
I was
at you.
like,
You're just...
son of a bitch. That's a good ending. I was like, why do you have to end this movie good? I was going to give it... I didn't... Oh. And I was like, God... It's just in such a whirlwind of confusion.
I'm hearing that Sage liked my movie choice.
You are just connecting so many synapses in my head right now, because the reason he finally stood up to somebody is because he finally had a reason to. He finally had somebody that he cared about, and it wasn't just him. Because a lot of the times people like that, and well, whatever, I can get shit on. Like, that's not the biggest deal. Like, I can take it. But then once somebody else comes into your life and you're like, well, them shitting on me now affects this other person, that changes the whole equation.
And this is actually a good tie into what I want to talk about earlier about his wanting to have conversations with people. And I think because he was like such a different person, he didn't connect with anybody. That's the reason he wanted to call the sex line or whatever, because he just wanted to talk to somebody. Like when he was like, oh yeah, I just have my pants on, I'm just chilling at home. I like that. Nothing about this is about like the sex portion.
Are you whacking it, baby?
And then like,
no.
When he like talked to his in-law and he was just like, hey, do you know someone I can talk to? I have all these things. So he was constantly trying to find someone that he can connect with. And I think he finally found that with her.
Because she's just as weird as he is.
Because we
didn't see it, but you
similar.
could tell that she was also cut from a different cloth.
And I think that's kind of like the funny thing about like love sometimes, is that I feel like sometimes it's just, you can't explain like why you connect to someone, but I think there's no real big reason why like they really connected. Like she just liked him, and he just decided to drop everything, and like he was like, oh, I think I like her, and then he like went to Hawaii, and all of a sudden he was, and like I noticed a change in even the music, and like because there's all that like anxiety inducing music that was like just a bunch of repetitive sounds, and then when he was on the plane to Hawaii, he was playing some like calm love song and all these things, and like just you could see it like in his face even when he's acting, just when he's like sitting on the bed and moving around, he clearly was happy. And I think that plays a big role in who he was at the end.
And even like when she was talking to his sister at the hotel, like the next morning, and she said something like, he's a weirdo. Like, I agreed with his sister, and like he didn't react to that. He just kind of smiled and was like, awesome. Like, this is like the girl for me. Like she knows that I don't want to be in contact with my sister.
Yeah.
And I did like the whole thing of what the sister kind of reacted to that with, what was it? It's the same situation where like we might shit on all the time, but if anybody else does, we're going to kick ass.
Yeah.
That type of thing where like,
I take a lot. That was another horrifying part of watching this movie, was how many parallels I drew with my life and this guy. I was like, holy shit.
Let's see. So I also had, I take notes as I'm watching the movie, and I guess it was probably about a third of the way through, I had, the beginning is very chaotic. And when the movie ended, I added, the chaos really didn't end. It was, there were a few moments where it wasn't very chaotic, but those moments were few and far between.
I think it was a pretty chaotic movie, but I think like at the same time, it seemed very, like, I don't know, overall I think it was very chaotic, but he seemed very calm throughout the entire movie, except for his blow-ups.
Yep.
But other than his blow-ups, he seemed as cool as a cucumber in every situation. And so I thought that was kind of just another hint to just who he is, and how he kind of like has handled everything throughout his entire life.
Have we talked about how good Adam Sandler did in this movie? Should we talk about that?
Because he's so good.
This was Uncut Gems round 2. I hated Uncut Gems.
I mean, this is Uncut Gems round 1.
I think he was better in this than he was in Uncut Gems.
Yeah, I know, because I couldn't fucking hear him in Uncut Gems. But in this one, he was, it was the same deal. Like, I don't know how I felt about the movie, except I know how I felt about Uncut Gems. But Adam Sandler killed it. And I saw he got nominated for Golden Globe Best Actor.
He got nominated?
He didn't win, but he got nominated.
Yeah, I completely disagree. I think he was a lot better in Uncut Gems, like a lot better. Not to say that he was bad in this, but I to me, this was, watching this, I was like, oh, well, there's the foundation of what he was going to go off of to build this huge mansion worth $2.5 billion in Uncut Gems. Because that's the type of performance I think he gave in Uncut Gems.
They're definitely very different, completely different characters.
They are for sure, but you can see the foundation built in this one to what he ended up making in Uncut Gems. Because I do think Uncut Gems is
I think
a phenomenal
this one
movie.
had such a greater variety of emotions that he showed than in Uncut Gems. Because in Uncut Gems, he was just a very loud gambler.
Yeah, I
but
think
in this one,
plays
like his going from beating the shit out of a bathroom to crying and like his face in his hands, and then walking out and
to
like
completely calm.
See,
it was
that one
crazy. Like it was really for Adam Sandler. For Happy Gilmore doing that was impressive.
I just think that this was a completely complex character, and he nailed it. And I think Uncut Gems is also a very complex. And I would love to do a movie review on Uncut Gems because I love that movie, and there's a lot in it, especially in his character and his gambling addiction. But in this one, I think he totally nailed the whole combination of shy and timid and just but these outbursts and kind of just like confused but also honest, and I don't know. So I
was very confused by that crying scene because, like, to me, I think it was because it was so early in the movie when it was happening. I was like, well, okay, well, this I think is an act to get out of, like, to kind of make up for like breaking those windows and whatnot. And so I think I'm wrong on that, but like that's what I thought in the moment. I was like, well, he's not actually crying. Like I was like, okay, well, he put his hands on his face and is like smiling in order to pretend that he's crying, and walked into a different room to kind of get out of it. Is what I took from that. But I think now that the movie is over, I think he was probably actually crying as his character in the movie.
He was definitely crying.
Yeah,
I mean, it happened like 4 or 5 times in the movie.
He definitely had like a lot of mental health issues, and I think that they pretty much just pin it on his just like sisters in his life growing up. But yeah,
I would have jumped off a building way before I got to where he was at in his life if I grew up with 7 sisters.
7 sisters would be a lot.
A lot.
Wow. And
yeah, so I guess my last kind of point was that I wrote down is that I think I really, and this will get into my score, so I can give my score first, but I think I really liked this film because it seemed anti-Hollywood and anti blockbuster films. I said it feels like it was breaking a lot of typical movie rules. Like there's I feel like I haven't studied film to a huge extent, but I feel like from what all the other movies I've seen, this just seems to have broken the rules as far as like the even the cuts between scenes and like all those colory weird images, the camera work. Just like I'll go back to that. I think that was really interesting. I think the characters and what their personalities were and all just everything about the film seemed to be very anti against the norm. I'd say, but
yeah, it definitely did. So again, I'm not a full-on film student, but I kind of went through a little bit of like editing work. At least I know like what the do's and do nots are of editing, and this film definitely broke a lot of those. You're not supposed to have these kind of jump cut scenes, which this movie was just full of, where walking out of a building and going to the right, the next scene they have to be coming in from the left. I don't know if that specific thing ever happened, but it probably didn't. But that type of thing is definitely broken in this, where like typically in filmmaking, you are supposed to lead your audience to be like, okay, well, this is probably what the next shot's going to be. And what this film did was, oh yeah, he's in the hospital. The next shot is going to be him at a payphone at a hospital, but the next shot was him at his office.
Yeah.
And then like when he went to Utah, he still had the phone in his hand, which like,
I love that.
That kind of brings
I'm gonna
me
make that
into
a Halloween costume. I'm just gonna wear a blue suit and carry a phone around in my hand.
That'd be a good Halloween costume.
That'd be great.
That kind of brings me into like my point about Paul Thomas Anderson, which we kind of got into at the beginning. He does so many things good in his movies that I'm like, oh yeah, this is a really good movie. And this kind of touched on this for a little bit as well, where it's so close to me loving it, but he does so many, and I can't think of a better word, but he just does so many weird things in his movie where it almost takes me out of it. And I'm trying to think of like, what the hell just happened? What I think I have it dialed down to after 4 Paul Thomas Anderson films is it's almost as if he's not artsy enough for me to enjoy it. I need either full on slop, like the Avengers movies and like Star Wars and like stuff like that, where I love those movies, or like Extraction or some of these action Netflix movies. I love the slop where the story doesn't really matter. It's just all about making things go boom. Or I need like full on artsy. And I think Paul Thomas Anderson, for me, and this is I'm probably in the minority here, which I'm fine with. I'm usually in the minority in life. He's stuck somewhere between he's an artsy filmmaker who kind of does what he wants, to also where he is doing this kind of big, not to say that this is a big budget movie, but the feel of a big budget movie where you're like, okay, well, this is supposed to be a really good movie. This is supposed to be appealing for the masses with having people like Adam Sandler and Philip Seymour Hoffman in there. Yeah. So
I think it's definitely one of those movies that, the cast at the time seems like it was big. Because that's, like we were talking about earlier, Adam Sandler in his pretty much one of, I guess you could say, his prime.
Yeah. Oh, I mean you definitely have to.
96 to early 2000s is about when his biggest movies were coming out. But it was very, it's one of those movies that I think he didn't, like, maybe the cast is to appeal to the mass audience, but the way that the film was made seems like it was not to appeal to the mass audience.
Yeah,
like,
but there's still elements in there where you're like, oh, like, this is like just typical filmmaking. Okay,
so I think because of all those things, and after talking it through, I've kind of nailed down my score. And I think talking it through raised my score. I think I was going to give it decently high, but I really, really like this film. I'm going to go with a 90.
Wow.
I really liked it. I like that.
What? Folks, that's a 9-0.
I'm going to say right now, I tend to lean towards these types of films that kind of leave the viewer to interpret the meaning, and the lack of information, and just kind of let the viewer make up or kind of decide for themselves what this was to them. That's my bread and butter. This movie hit it on the tee. And so, I love a good love story. So
for sure. All right, before we get to our next score, let me read off some of the score aggregators scores. Rotten Tomatoes 79% positive, IMDb 7.3 out of 10, and Metacritic 78 out of 100. So I still have absolutely zero idea what I'm going to score this, so I'm going to pass the buck.
Man, if the whole movie was like the first 2/3, I'd give it like a 4. If the whole
that'd be a 40.
That'd be a 4 out of 10, folks.
40, yeah, 4 out of 10. If the whole movie was like the last third, I'd give it like an 8.5. All in all, that was just such a frustratingly good movie. But the frustration outweighs the goodness. I'm going to give it a 6.2. That's my final score.
Son of a gun. That's about the range that I was going to go. I think I liked it a little bit more than you did. A little bit more than a 62 out of 100. It's not a 90 for me. I'm kind of like it's not that I didn't enjoy the first 2/3, because I did. I actually think all of it was very enjoyable. Oh, now I'm talking myself up higher. Man, this is so hard. This is one of the hardest movies I've ever had to give a
This
score
is the
to.
hardest
And
movie I've ever thought about.
That
Yeah.
is the
Scoring.
reason I think why I love it so much.
Yeah,
is this reason right here.
The things that I like, again, we've talked about the things that I don't like about it. I don't like the editing. I don't like how the score was too loud for me. That's going to knock 5 points off of it. That's the classic Jacob too high of a score
Too
in the
many
mix.
sounds going on.
5-point deduction. Everybody knows about that one. So you probably, when you watched this, you probably knew that was coming. I am going to land at a solid 69. Not even doing a bit on that, but I just think that's where it just has to land. I think a 69 out of 100 is.
And I think honestly those are higher scores than I thought I'd get from both of you after we finished watching them, because I thought my initial thought was once the film ended and we hadn't said a word yet, I was like, is gonna hate this movie. It's gonna he's gonna just trash on it. And I thought that I wasn't sure.
I was going to, and then it ended so good. Fucking.
All right, so interestingly enough, that's going to be an aggregate score of 74, which puts it right about the range of our other two. So I think the first one was about a 72.3 or so, and then I think last week's was like a 75 or so.
It was my pick, so yeah, it would be the highest. Yeah,
I can't remember. We'll go back and look, and we'll tell you.
My
next week,
scores just keep going up. So
I do want to say Adam Sandler gets a 9 out of 10.
Oh,
yeah, for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Philip Seymour Hoffman gets like a 95.
Well, Philip Seymour Hoffman gets a 10 out of 10 at all times. He's brilliant.
No such thing as a 10 out of 10.
Well, okay, yeah, that's true. That's more of a Tom Hanks.
I just said no such thing.
Well, Tom Hanks.
No, that's a lie. There are perfect movies, and there can be multiple perfect movies, and there can be perfect acting performances.
Yeah, definitely can be perfect. Yeah, delivery of the film.
Well, folks, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode.
Next time it will be Jacob's choice.
Next time it's me.
Boo.
We've got a great one for you guys. I've already got it picked out. It's a new movie, too. It's from 2020. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, though.
Interesting.
No, it's not too many hints.
It's kind of a big hint, but I like it.
Nah, there's been a fair amount of movies come out this year. All right.
What?
Yeah. Follow us on Instagram, GD4. That's the number 4, GD.movies. On Twitter, GD4. Again, number 4 _movies. And come back next week. We're going to watch a Netflix movie.
Another hint.
Another hint, folks. Another hint.
When you come to the end of the line with a buddy who is more than a brother and a little less than a wife, getting blind drunk together is really the only way to say farewell.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.